Hello everyone and welcome to the tutorial for the brand new map of Myren, or Myren, however you want to pronounce it. Myren was released 2 weeks ago in update 15 and I gotta say it's a very interesting map. It's very different from the previous maps in a lot of ways. Myren represents a border post or border checkpoint between Norway on the left side of the map and the USSR on the right side of the map. It's a very flat and open map, there's plenty of cover and I find that the mid-range gunfights are to be quite entertaining. Myren is a large map with a lobby of 9 to 12 people. The most unique feature of this map is probably the landmines. This map features a couple of areas that are full of mines. Honestly, one of the most unique ways I've ever seen to create separation on a map. Usually this is done with rivers or wall or height separation, but the minefield suits perfectly in the setting here. I've taken some time to find all of the minefields and map them out, so this is what you see on the screen here. I've also mapped out the wired fence that is placed on both sides of the border with the big open space in between. Took some effort mapping all of this. I basically recorded myself opening my map at every warning post and then traced this back in Paint. My master's degree in Paint has finally paid off, as you can see, but there aren't that many active minefields. Most people probably avoid the entire dead zone in the middle between the borders, but it's actually a lot safer than you would think. Yes, it is open and exposed, but if you know where to run, you can cross very quickly, just like crossing the icy river on Verg or the big river on Grottenheim. You just need to know where to go and where not to go. For Myren, you can walk pretty safely on areas that have water, there are no mines on the watery swampy parts. And if there is a giant crater, then it is safe as well, because this represents areas where there used to be minefields, but they have already been detonated during the war. Also, the rocky parts are usually quite safe, but I have seen some mines, so tread carefully. So yeah, there are a few spaces where you can cross safely. The south feels the safest actually. The northern part feels more exposed and also has some trenches along the sides of the borders that could host snipers or other hostiles that could pick you off quickly. And if you crossed west to east, then you may up in one of these smaller minefields. There's also a couple of minefields outside of the dead zone. The little patch up north, it's very easy to accidentally walk into that one as it is in a direct path between the center of the map and the northern exit. Down south there's also a small patch that is right before the exit, but that one has some walking paths where you can just safely follow to get through it. Now for the mines themselves, I think they do less damage than a contact bomb, so you don't really need to worry too much about stepping on one. I think the real danger is in the fact that when they go off, you give away your location while you are on a very exposed part of the map. I'm going to keep the wired fence and the landmines visible on all the maps for this tutorial. And next up are the points of interest on Myren, and there are a lot of locations. I marked as many as I could find in 100 games, but even if I marked Bard House once at a location, it could actually spawn in multiple buildings on that site. Like the small village up in the northwest, it has 4 buildings and I think at least 3 of them have the potential to be Bard House. Same goes for time save, it could spawn at multiple locations, and of course the switches have even more possibilities, and sometimes you really need to go very far to find the second switch. But yeah, very spread out in general, like every corner of the map has a chance for Bard House. Time save seems to be more concentrated on the bigger areas of the map, and the locked container with a whopping 12 spawning locations is usually very exposed, so I do recommend using the explosive ordnance tactic to open it. The only downside on this map is that points of interest can be very far away from your original spawning location sometimes, which means that you have zero chance of getting there in time. If you spawn somewhere in the south or southeast, and Bard and time save both spawn northwest, there is really no way you will pull through the entire map to get there in time. You'll be encountering other players, and by the time you get there it'll be too late. Most other maps you have a slight chance to get there if you use a stim boost and caffeine on your starting run, but even here with a boost I don't feel like you have a real chance to get there in time. So keep that in mind if you like playing for the points of interest, that this map may be a hit or miss sometimes. There also isn't an algorithm or anything that will space them out a little bit, so sometimes they just spawn right on top of each other in a corner of the map and you're just on the other side and you just have bad luck. And next we have the loot distribution on Myren. I hope they tweak it a little bit, because sometimes I feel the loot is too low for the amount of time and effort you need to put into finding it. Especially if the points of interest fall out of range of your spawning location. I marked the good spots in green, the northwestern village, the little village to the west exit, the overlook with the car parking west side, the two areas on the southern exit, the little shack near the chemical dump. That's the name of the lake, that's not per se a good spot for chemicals. And the two big border crossing areas, both east and west, and the little settlement east with the new building. These are by far the better locations to find loot. The yellow area, this is where you can find small amounts of loot with some higher value, like electronics or chemicals or fuel. Most of these are small landmarks like a tent camp or some trash piles, small military checkpoints and trenches of course. And then the red areas are actually the cars along the road. The main road has plenty of them, especially near the exit. So that's a good strategy to loot the cars on your way out. Of course, always be aware of the risk versus reward when setting off car alarms. And I have also noticed that the blue lockboxes have a chance here to spawn outside instead of inside. I even found one once on the back of a small truck on the road near the eastern exit. So that is a completely new feature for this map. The marked areas are of course not the only places where you will find loot. You will occasionally find small boxes with wire and metal along the road on random locations. But yeah, as you can see, you need to go to a lot of locations to find loot. And if you combine this with the points of interest spawning locations, that means there isn't really a main playing field on Myren like there is on other maps. I already said that this map is very different from the others, and this is just one of the reasons why. Loot is everywhere, points of interest are everywhere. The shape is also more squarish than most maps. Most bigger maps are rectangular, so that means that locations are always further away as well. The northeast section may look the most interesting, but it also has the most running around on. I found that the southwest area and trying to take some of that midwest to northwest will give you the most loot at this point of course. Devs can always tweak the loot, and I hope they do tweak it a little bit to be a bit better. Plenty of chemicals on this map, and white tier resources like nails, wire and metal. Very little fertilizer, not the best map for fertilizer. Glass is okay if you happen to find any. Fuel and electronics. Fuel is a bit low, electronics are alright if you can get some from cars and the blue electrical boxes. In general, this is an okay map. I think this is a good new player map where there is plenty of room to move around from, not forced into a single area, and still being able to get a lot of variation in the loot to exit and upgrade your shelter. Alright, time for everybody's favorite part now, the spawning locations. Plenty of spawns here, but the usual disclaimer, I may not have all of them. Same goes for the points of interest and signals. There are just so many potential locations that it has been a very big task to try and find them all. But here I have all the ones I found, all 21 spawning locations, and the pattern here is pretty clear. You spawn on the outer edge and your closest person is probably within visual range after 5 seconds. Nothing too special here, just expect to have at least 2 people near you whenever you spawn. None of the spawns have a big benefit or a big downside. All of them are quite equal in terms of advantages and disadvantages and location and distance to the better locations. It's all going to depend a lot on where the points of interest spawn. The southern spawns are the closest one to the border posts. The northwest area has the little village there. And the northeast ones, those are my least favorite ones to be honest. But they also have the little village just outside of the border post to go to. Like I said, northeast seems to be the least favorite in my opinion. But besides that, there's no real advantage or disadvantage at any of them. Next up is signals. And usually I have some special notes about every location where signals may spawn and what to look out for. But yeah, if you look at the screen, this is pretty accurate. This is not a bug or anything. I may even have missed a few, but there are 31 potential spawning locations for signal detector. Most maps usually have 5 to 8, so this is another reason why the map is completely different. Most of these can of course be clustered into smaller groups, but you would still end up with about 12 locations I think where signals can spawn on slightly different locations. The little village up north for example has 3 spots, but it's all in the village. Same with the Norwegian border post. Just one location with multiple spots. Be careful for the rooftop campers there. So what can we say about signals? Not much really. You will have to adapt to wherever it spawns and make an educated guess with the location of the points of interest in mind on how to proceed in the game. A good thing here is that, at least in solos, it feels that signals is less of a power struggle on this map, because it's such a big map. If it spawns near one of the outer edges, okay, somebody will get to it really quick, but it's usually useless to track down people on the other side of the map. It spawns in the center, again, good location, you can hold that little area down, but even the two border posts are actually quite far apart to go back and forth on it. I think this map favors the signal detector more for the people who want to go for the airdrop, as it gives a more dynamic to where you can put the airdrop location in combination as to where signal is at the time that it lands. I'm no airdrop specialist, but one of the best things you can do right before you pick up the airdrop is hit signals to see where everybody is. And I think this map plays a lot more in the favor of the airdrop than it does into other aspects of the game. And here we have my favorite part of the tutorial, the map dynamics. I love pretending I'm an expert at something. Okay, so Myren, like I said, very different, no real main playing field. The whole map is actually a giant playing field, and if we look at the spawns in combination with the points of interest, there's actually very little to predict. It depends on so many factors, what people will do, what kind of players do you have in the lobby, which point of interest is closest, where's signals, where's the second point of interest, where are the comm stations. I never really talk about those, but yeah, even the comm stations can be very spread out sometimes. So that means that the airdrop players will have to run around a lot more, and they won't really have time to go looting in between if they want to get the airdrop. And even if I place some arrows to where people might go, you just get a really big mess. So it's not really possible to predict everything. What I can say is this: the first 3 minutes of the game, there will be a lot of conflicts, and usually between more than 2 people. It's very rare to just fight one enemy and then be safe. There's usually a second or third guy waiting to take you out when you're done with your first. And I'd call that a rule on this map. There's always going to be 3 people fighting each other at the start of the game. So early game hot zones are marked here, but usually depends on the points of interest as well. I do not recommend rushing a point of interest. Container is very exposed, both safes will take you a long time to open, so secure the area first by killing the enemy players, or ignore these areas and loot somewhere else. After about minute 5 to 6, if you're still alive on this map, you may consider yourself pretty safe. Usually if you check a portable, you will notice that the closest person is actually far away from you. But that's also the hardest moment to still get any loot around this map, as a lot of it will be cleaned already. After that, the airdrop comes and the remaining players may come your way if you expose your location, or they could just head to an exit and you won't encounter anybody. Usually in the late game you won't find many players anymore, but definitely keep your guard up because you could still intersect with them near an exit or at a point of interest, or you could get sniped by that raincoat that's been in the watchtower the whole game. So in a nutshell, how to play Myren: survive the first 4 minutes and kill the 2 other players. Be fast if you want to loot. Rush to a point of interest, but do not rush to open the point of interest unless you are ready to take a risk. Craters are safe, rooftops get camped, and try not to get tied up in a gunfight early game. You have to spend the first 3 minutes killing one guy because you're going back and forth shooting at each other. You lose a lot of valuable time and you may end up leaving with nothing at all. Alright, it's time for the last part of this tutorial, and that is the exits. Myren has 4 exits, and that seems quite low for such a big map, but the developers did a great job here. 2 of the exits are actually very big. The northern one is so wide it actually counts as 2 exits in my opinion. It's a bit exposed to get to, but if you save your stamina for the last sprint, you should be fine. The southern exit is also a bit bigger and can be accessed from both sides of the border. There's a big campy rock in the middle of them, so be mindful of that. Also, at the time of this video, the crows do not always work on this exit. Western exit is also a good exit. No real campy locations for exit campers other than behind some of the cars and some of the rocks. It's pretty open, so you have a good sight, but that also goes for the potential exit campers. Still, close enough to the southern exit that you could switch up your strategy if needed. Eastern exit, also not a bad exit, but a lot more campy spots in my opinion. Also a very small area where the crows go off, so you're almost in the exit when the crows go off. Not my most preferred exit, I'm not sure why, it just gives me an unsafe feeling sometimes. It's also a bit further away from other exits if you want to switch it up. Also, do not underestimate the distance from the center of the map to any of these exits. I put a small red zone in the middle, and if you are in that area when radiation hits, you really need to get going, otherwise you might not make it out in time. So as always, start your exit runs on time and always check where radiation is coming from. Alright, I think that covers everything I have been able to collect on Myren so far. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that it gives you some insight on how to navigate it better. Let me know in the comments if I missed anything in regards to the spawning locations for both POIs as players. And be sure to subscribe if you want to stay up to date with the latest Vigor news and enjoy the occasional gameplay video. Thank you all for watching and I hope to see you all next video. Bye!